accomplishing. Seeing me bring the ruckus in. Life is by the something, so she decided to talk her skin. Everything is rolling like them 5-star Michelins. People kept requesting, so it's back to the grill again. It's like that, cause that's the way it is. On the edge, that's how I live. Right across the bridge, it's sickening. But I keep a certain code, cause I'm a Christian. Especially when I unload. Yeah, you know me, man. I don't deal with a lot of folk. I just talk to them with the rhyme I wrote and the rhymes I write. You feel me, right? But some of them still don't know they left from their right. I'm about to set it all right. I'm so much like Floyd. I was thinking about retirement, but then I got bored. Heard a chord from the keys and started running to the vocal booth. Understands one knee, aimed at what I gotta shoot. One shot to my folks living life like soldiers. Mind made up, can't nobody hold you. One shot to get this paper and I'm out of in a Benz or a Jag or maybe a Maserati. One shot.
Welcome, family, to Wally's Wisdom Podcast, WKYT, where Wally keeps you thinking all day and all night long. It's a beautiful Saturday, September 2nd, 2017. How you doing, family? We're here broadcasting out of Stone Mountain, Georgia, and this is what I do, bringing the best out of me to get the best out of you. And today, a back-to-back show. Of course, many of you who was there with me last night heard me and my daughter, Kiwi the Beauty, expound upon a lot of things, especially discussing from vision board, B-O-R-E-D, to vision board, B-O-A-R-D. And a lot of you who've already texted me and let me know you appreciate her being on the show, today will be an additional dose of the same. Family, let me let you know this. For some time, many of you who've been watching news, you've been really paying attention to the Houston, Beaumont, Louisiana floods. Please pay attention, as I said last night, to Sierra Leone as well. Our brothers and sisters across the diaspora still need for you to know they're in pain as well. We have a nation and a worldwide situation where calamities, floods, fires can happen at any time. HARP technology aside, sometimes that plays a role in this also. Beware of false flags. I'm going to continuously tell you that. Watch for the distractions. Today's show, however, the Alchemy of Sports, we're going to delve into that because it bears a lot of attention paying to. Let me let you know this, family. My special guest today is a brother I've known the better part of 10 years. A brother in the so-called conscious community has helped me a lot while my 10 years on the Harambe Radio and Television Network. He was our producer extraordinaire. The brother also has been responsible for getting certain people to the air. The well-known Kaba Kamene, he was instrumental in him coming back on my show. The brother is a well-known spoken word poet himself in the Atlanta and the surrounding areas, and a brother who consistently gives information to the people to research and delve in for themselves what is truth. Out of Alabama, now living in the a brother that is very dear in my social circle, someone that's going to bring this issue of the alchemy in sports to the airwaves with me today. My good brother, Dub Deuce, the poet. How you doing, my brother?
I'm good, brother. How are you, Brother Wallace?
Oh, man, I'm doing great, man. Just love everything we've been doing here, especially while we was on the Harambe Radio and Television Network together. You in the background as the producer extraordinaire. And a good shout out to our brother, Delani Amon, CEO and founder. We know we're keeping in touch with you, brother, and good health and well blessings on your eyesight. We know you got some challenges there. And I'm also doing some things with my eyes, and appreciate the information you gave me, Dub, on the goji berries and the cod liver oil on that. And I'm doing some research, and I'm going to pick up those products. But lately in the news, there's been a lot of information about the protests with the Colin Kaepernick situation, where he, of course, hasn't gotten a job yet as a quarterback or backup in the NFL. A lot of our people are taking it to the streets, protesting, not watching the NFL, thinking that's the main thing that they're protesting about. They're forgetting the issue of why he knelt anyway, which was the injustices our people are experiencing by police brutality and racism in general. That's the real issue that people are sidestepping, and they're thinking it's about an NFL contract. I want to tie that into what we're discussing today, because I think it goes beyond just what's happening to Colin Kaepernick. It's what's happening to people, and a lot of us are missing that boat, and they're standing in protest, but they really don't have an agenda themselves.
Well, Brother Wallace, like you said, well, you may have actually called it correct the first time when you said colon, but meaning not necessarily the person, meaning Mr. Kaepernick, but more so that what is in front of us in television.
Right.
In a sense, it needs a colon cleanse because there's a lot of shit on there.
There you go.
To be quite frank with it.
Keep it 100.
It's a lot of games, and I'm not talking about the game between the end zones, the 100 to the 100 kind of thing. I'm talking about more so the politics of it, in reference to you have those that are saying Colin Kaepernick is being blackballed or whiteballed, whichever way you want to reference, but in this case it means the same. The brother is a hell of an athlete historically. Now, like I said, the past 2 years, his skills have diminished, or his talent is diminished. But when he was on that Super Bowl run, and even a year or two after that, he was one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. But lately, he took a back seat. The coach that he had didn't care for his skill set, didn't want him in. Actually, I think brought in another quarterback or so to replace him. So he ended up being a backup. But in the past 2 years, he has a record of 16-4. Now that's on paper and in performance in a sense, but that's nowhere near the level that he was once before. So when you hear those athletes that talk about, well, he's a distraction, he's not as good as he once was. I wouldn't say distraction, but he's not as good as he once was in one sense. But in the other sense, like you said, what's getting lost in the sauce is because of the different additives that's been added on to why he kneeled in the first place. Because you rarely hear that talked about. Now you talk about kneeling for the flag. Well, the first thing was kneeling for the flag, protesting for the flag, and people jumped on that. Even teammates and people across the league jumped on it because it was a fad.
Right.
It was something to do. It was the end thing to do. But then most of them stopped, but he was the only one that continued on. So when you continue on, that means that's not a fad for you. That's something, because I've heard announcers say, well, why didn't he do it when he was in, the Super Bowl type quarterback? He may have just what we call, let's say, woke up. I can't determine when your consciousness kicks in, just like you can't determine when mine kicks in. So I can't determine your actions like you can't determine mine.
Right.
So it kicked in when it kicked in because, the brother said he was tired of, I guess, police brutality. And we all are in a sense, but many of us will not do anything to, at the very least, speak up. But we have to do more than just speaking up. And we'll get to that probably a little bit later. But again, there's a lot of, things that need to be cleansed out of this mess, out of this colon thing.
Colon cleanse, literally. And you made a good point, because Jim Brown, a lot of people know on the backstory, Jim Brown has said that Colin Kaepernick has to decide whether he wants to be an athlete or a revolutionary. And then there's been people who've come on the air and said, well, Jim Brown, you got to remember, you brought attention to Muhammad Ali when he protested in 67 against the draft. You brought out Bill Russell and Lou Alcindor at the time, which of course is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Right.
But people got to remember, Jim Brown was now an actor. He was not in the NFL. So what he said was taken out of context. He said, well, as an actor, he's using his acting platform to say that Colin Kaepernick, the whole asshole, however you want to use the word,
right.
We're saying that needs to be cleansed, not the person. But this funk that's between our people trying to decide who's on what side of the fence, the police brutality part is being missed. Mm-hmm. And because we were still getting beat up in Los Angeles and New York in the 60s. So as Ali was protesting the war, he was saying, wait a minute, ain't nobody calling me a nigger over there. I'm getting called nigger here. I'm getting called nigger when I go to certain arenas and I fight. People were going to the fights to watch him lose. So in retrospect, Kaepernick's really saying, hey man, I'm taking a knee. Now a lot of other brothers and white folks who are getting involved in it, they're saying now the league wants to look at how to do damage control. Now, you and I had a discussion. You had made mention to me that we're not even 15% of the buying ticket audience. So protesting isn't going to hurt them in the pocket where you think. Watching less commercials, they're still going to get paid by the commercials. Speak to that, where our people don't know that the numbers, the dollars and cents where they say you have to hit the pundits in the pocket will help people know we're not playing. Well, what are you really showing dollar-wise where they think you're not?
Well, you got to remember, again, most of the time when those people that always, most of the time screaming, protest, boycott, most of them don't live that kind of lifestyle. And they're not on the front lines like that. So even a boycott or a march, it can be deemed as a front line, but it's really not. Remember, this thing is chess, not checkers. And that's what you see when I say this thing needs a colon cleanse per se. I'm saying it from a chess standpoint. Again, not the person Kaepernick or Colin Kaepernick. No, I'm not disrespecting the brother like that. I wouldn't dare do that. Because the owners know the numbers.
Right.
They know the numbers. The commissioner knows the numbers. The players don't. They have no. They just don't. And if the players don't, you know the masses of the people don't. So those numbers are staggering. Again, in 2015, the number came out that whites are 77% of the fans in the NFL. The Hispanics are 8%, and blacks represent 15%. Out of that 15%, the majority of those only that represent mainly 4 teams, 2 heavy teams, the Cowboys and the Steelers, and the others being like the Redskins and the Falcons. So remember, you got 32 teams.
Right.
32 teams, and you only represent 15% of the fan base. So how much damage could you really do by not watching? Not too much. But then that goes back to the old saying of, and this is the stance that I take on it. One thing I learned a long time ago, Wallace, is many years ago, is I can only help you, but I can't help you until you help yourself. So if Colin Kaepernick is, right now he's unemployed, so he's no longer in the NFL. But those that are in the NFL and feel the way that he feels and want to take the stand that they want to take, they have to take it before somebody else can help them, to help their cause. You have to help yourself first. We talk about that all the time in the mini shows that we've done from an inner standpoint. If you're not willing to put that will up and that fight within yourself, what am I doing? I'm putting myself in harm's way for you. You're sitting on the sideline. I'll give you a perfect example. Again, I've learned so many life lessons young and early on in my my very very street kind of ways back then, way back then. I remember one of my best friends and another guy. Again, I knew the guy. We was from a small town, so everybody knows everybody. So I guess they had a fight early in the week, and this was the weekend. So I guess my best friend got the best of that guy. So the guy wanted another pizza, shot at him. So, but my best friend didn't want to fight. Didn't want to fight at all. So it ended up that it's like this big brawl, this big gang fight broke out. I mean, we talking, I would say over 50 people in a rumble. What's again telling my age because we call it a rumble, right?
Oh yeah, that was what it was back in the day.
So in that rumble, a lot of people, some people got hurt, some people got sent to the hospital. Luckily, no one died. But what I'm saying that to say is, Wallace, guess how many times my best friend got hit? Just take a guess.
None. I mean, because I'm looking at from what you're saying. How can you help yourself? If we took scraps for you, did you get hit?
Guess how many punches he threw?
Oh, tell me he threw at least a punch.
None.
He didn't get hit either.
No, he didn't get hit because he didn't throw none.
So he was in the background hiding.
Right. So what I'm saying is, and when I found that out, and he knew I was pissed off at that, because this whole thing started because of you. It started because of you. So here I am attempting to protect him, but he did nothing. Nothing. Now again, not saying that he was we're right or wrong, you know, because again, this was a street fight kind of thing. So there's so many different ways that could have went horribly wrong.
Right.
But again, the premise of what I'm saying is, from that moment on, I was like, I will never help you again or stick up for you again until I see you fight at least 5 other guys at one time.
Right.
Again, I can't help you until you help yourself. And I'm using, again, a very street, dumb, and it was dumb act as an example, but I'm just saying, I can't help you until you help yourself. I can't help you, NFL player, until you want to stand up for yourself. And when you stand up, you got to stand up not just in a physical standpoint by kneeling or literally standing on 2 feet. You got to stand up with something of tangible agenda.
Or sacrifice.
Right. So, well, in order for something to happen, in order for something to change, somebody has to be sacrificed.
Right.
That's and I'm
a paycheck, a couple of games.
right. Something has to be sacrificed with those players, and nobody wants to be that sacrificial lamb. And that part, I believe they do know subconsciously that one of us gonna have to bite this bullet. That's why when you catch the guys, I believe it was like a Des Bryant or somebody, and probably most of them probably think it too, is, you know, I got a family to feed. I won't lose my check. You know, I don't want to lose my check. I got a family to feed. But again, I can't help you until you want to help yourself. I can't put myself in harm's way for you if you don't want to help yourself. Give you another example, Wallace, because we're talking about Colin Kaepernick being blackballed, and you know, I think about a week or so ago, people went up to the NFL office in New York and went to protest.
On the 23rd, they was marching around the building,
and all these other activists for other things jumped on this bandwagon again. You're protesting about a job. Think about it. Somebody being blackballed from a job. How many times at your current workplace has somebody else been blackballed? Many times. Because many of us believe that we're passed over because of what? We're black. Because we're traditionally passed over for someone that's not black. We're traditionally passed over for someone that has less experience
and skill.
Yeah. So you being blackballed all across the board on every level. You can imagine. Management level, definitely. Most people definitely believe that they've been passed over more times than none. But we don't see that, Wallace. We jump on fast. We jump on what's hot. You know, Kaepernick's been doing wrong. He's been blackballed. Is somebody at your office being blackballed? Or have you been blackballed? Well, that's different. How so? Because again, we're just talking about a job.
And making less money than they do.
Right. And one, we're talking about a job, and two, there's this whole protest thing is you have no agenda.
The end game. Like, what are we looking to get out of this?
Right.
Not being an episodic person. I've heard it said that, especially black people, we're an episodic people, meaning what's the next thing we're going to do? We're going to march. We're going to protest. We're going to go against. We're going to join. We're going to not eat this. We're going to boycott that Korean store because of the hair or whatever it is. So we find ways and fads like, and I didn't want to get off topic, but I'd made mention to you that, well, there was another brother, that the whole hurricane thing, they're talking about the black people that's being displaced. Pay attention to what's going on in Texas and Louisiana where black people are not being saved at the rate white people are. And now you're throwing racism in that game. Now,
that's a form of blackballing.
Yes, it is. But we got to know how much control in anything. We're going to stay on sports, but in anything we look at as a people, especially when we're talking in sports, but related to us as a people, let's make sure how much control did we have and how much was taken away. Now, with Colin Kaepernick, how much control will you have? Going back to what you said, can you help yourself? He's standing. He's still kneeling. You and I talked about this. Can he be bought? Meaning, let's say they give him a job. Somebody said he's toying with the Jaguars to sign a contract. He had a tryout. Let's say the Jaguars sign him. then Colin Kaepernick starts to stand for the flag. I don't think he will, but let's shift the paradigm for a minute. What if Colin Kaepernick starts standing for the flag and putting his hand over his chest? Would you sane people start protesting, going, oh, hell no. He didn't do all of this to get a job, now turn and become Uncle Ruckus, Samuel Jackson and Django. You know what I'm saying? What's wrong with them people over there? You know, you got to watch what you're saying, because just like people are faulting Jim Brown for speaking out when you was an activist 50 years ago, wait a minute. Let's make sure Colin Kaepernick stays true to the game that he's protesting again, and don't let them buy you. I don't think they will. But I wonder what would happen if that happened. Would you protest the NFL altogether?
And that's why I say make sure your protest is on solid ground and not out of just emotions.
Right.
Because if you're just protesting because a guy doesn't have a job, then you're doing it off of something that doesn't have substance. Because you gave a perfect example of what I think I said a few weeks ago. That if that's the case, you're just protesting off emotions, then you can be satisfied with a pacifier. A pacifier is what? We just signed him and put him on the practice squad. Now he has a job. He doesn't even have a backup job. He's on the practice squad. That's somebody sticking a baby crying, and you want milk. You want that milk. But if you're and you want that nature, that mother's breast, that's
exactly
what you want. But somebody sticks a pacifier in your mouth and you stop crying.
You're suckling but getting no nutrients.
Right. Exactly. So you're not necessarily attached to nature. You're attached to the part of it, you say, sucking.
They call you a sucker now.
Exactly.
You're doing some sucker shit.
So you're attached to being a sucker.
Right.
And that's what a baby that's normally fed through a bottle, that easily satisfied with a pacifier, versus baby that's fed off a mother's breast milk. Pacifier not going to work all the time.
They know the difference.
Exactly. Because you are attached to nature. The more nature that you're attached to, the more of your natural self that you're attached to, which I'm hoping that Colin has progressed to, which triggered him to kneel. Then the more survival, the more natural you are. The more you're able to survive through whatever elements come your way. I.e., again, cross-referencing, look at the latest Planet of the Apes movie. At the end of the movie, how did the ape, particularly Caesar, survive? He attached himself to nature. He eventually died. But when all the chaos was going on, how did he survive?
Spoiler alert for those who didn't see it.
He attached himself to nature. He hugged a tree. And trees have energy. Trees give off that life nutrients that we need. I joke with one of my coworkers from time to time. He's still caught in religion. He still does religion. I'm not going to say caught in religion. He's like, man, you be out there hugging trees. I'm like, yeah, why not? I'm like, go hug that tree over there. Man, ain't worshiping that tree. Ain't worshiping that tree. Man, you're not worshiping the tree. The tree's feeding you. So, and going back to what you said, agenda, and not having one. And I said earlier how most people aren't that are out yelling, let's protest, let's not watch the NFL. Okay. So if don't watch the NFL, are you going to watch your high school game? Are you going to watch the Pee Wee game? And take it even further. When the national anthem is played at the Pee Wee game, are you going to allow your son, you going to tell your son to kneel? Or are you going to tell him to stand up with his hand on his heart?
And in school, too.
Right.
He might as well stop in school during whatever they're pledging.
And again, cross-referencing those that say, well, let's not watch NFL. Okay. Can we not watch Empire? Can we stop watching the reality shows? Most can't do that. So if you can't do that, then how can you come about and say, well, let's stop watching the NFL? Because it's blackballing all across, even on your favorite television show, even using some of the hottest black actors and actresses. They're being blackballed too.
Monique, the comedian. allegedly she's blackballed because she spoke out against Tyler Perry, who's a heavyweight in Hollywood, and she exposed what he wasn't doing as far as paying his actresses the same top dollar Meryl Streep is getting, and Demi Moore and all these other actors. She called him out on it. And, of course, he got ties to Oprah Winfrey and those other execs. And her name got out there, and she says, I'm going to call you out on that. And she basically made reference, and you have some ties to Tyler, and you'll let it be known how much. But she got blackballed, allegedly, in the industry because of what she said about him, because she's calling out the unfairness that he has access to correct. I don't know how much you know about that. I'm sure you know a little. But her voice was becoming prominent. She won a little Oscar for Precious, which was a crap movie to me. But people was beginning to know her, but they said, wait a minute, we gave you a talk show, you got an Oscar, now you speaking out against somebody we revere. What's that about?
Actually, the initial, I guess, thing with Monique started with Lee Daniels.
Right.
And I think in one of her comedies, stand-ups, she happened to run down, the names of Lee Daniels, Oprah Winfrey, and Tyler Perry. So I don't think she's ever worked directly with Tyler, but I think she just happened to run it down what power she believed he has.
Okay.
But again, it was more of because she's worked with Lee Daniels, I think, on more than one occasion.
Precious, and then something else I forgot.
Yeah, but again, even that's why I said even your local, not only at your regular 9 to 5, your actors, your actresses, your athlete, even. In your Pee Wee leagues, children are blackballed. I was blackballed as an athlete. I was passed over for whatever reason, nepotism, you may say. High school, same thing. So when we speak, most of the time, we're speaking from a perspective of experience.
Whether it happened to me in college,
right? Whether we went through it, we went through it, or someone else close to us that went through it. So again, people. And it's not to say, well, I'm supporting, I'm an advocate for the NFL or pro athletes. No, I'm not. I'm just literally stating what's obvious and how we tend to be, let's say, pawns to the game. Because I referenced earlier, I think we talked about a video, the movie The Revolver with Andre 3000 and Jason Statham,
right?
Where they talked about the formula to winning, and that's
through chess.
Right, it's through chess. Where you believe, and Jason told Andre 3000 that, hey man, you only get better by playing a smarter opponent. And Dre was like, well, sounds like a snake to me. And he said, don't knock it. You can only get better by playing a snake.
Well, in a way, that's really going back to interacting with those that you consider the oppressor. And I'm not saying interact to learn from them, but to learn what they're doing within the confines of what you're trying to be part of. Vis-a-vis, here we go, Colin wants to get back in the NFL. You're protesting that he's not in the NFL. Now that you have to say, well, how do I get at the table where the decisions are made? See, where decisions are made, and we know there's only one partial black owner in the NFL. All the other 32 teams, all the other owners are white. So when people say, what decisions do the owners make? Because the owners can't be forced to hire him. There's no collective bargaining agreement that says they have to hire him. Roger Goodell has nothing to do with that. So when you're not at the table, our people, black people, and you're protesting for him to get a job, to be employable, at least considered, have a tryout, what are you saying that you know at the table how to play that better opponent in their game? The game that you want to be part of. So Colin Kaepernick has to know your agent and those people who surround you. They have to say, okay, are they going to ask you like Michael Vick, who stepped on his tongue, like George Foreman, clean up your image? What image? What am I doing wrong? So that's not a game I'm willing to play because you're not better than me, like Malcolm X said. Good brother who I have on the wall here. He says, you're not an image that I'm trying to be like. As a matter of fact, you're not my equal to even try to be in the same arena. More or less, I walk as a god. To have to look to you for approval makes me insane. So I think sometimes people, whether Colin gets a job in the NFL or not, he's going to rise above this and may be more beneficial somewhere else where his talent as a voice will be used in a more constructive way, not manipulated by athletic skill. That's what I'm hoping as this year goes through and the NFL season progresses. I hope people start seeing what is he doing in communities, plural, that supersedes him as an athlete on the field, that you can say, you know what? It's better that brother could be used for his energy in that arena, in schools, in black colleges, and wherever, to tell people to stand up for what's right. At your job, will you stand up for that brother who may have gotten fired? Are you guys going to protest outside the boss's office and risk losing your job? If you're not, that means you're a sham. That means you need a colon cleanse, as you aforementioned earlier. And maybe there's something that's coming out of your mouth that shows you got bad breath because you're speaking about the same thing, but it's the arena that you're not willing to walk in when it comes down to you.
Let me give you a couple of more little nuggets, Wallace.
Mm-hmm.
The NFL has a players' union. That's what that's for.
Exactly.
If whenever blackballing or something like that occurs, that's what they're supposed to handle. But they don't. Throw another one at you, as we talked about a famous actor or two, actors or two earlier. That's what the union's supposed to handle whenever they're blackballed, but they don't. That's what the film production crews supposed to their unions are supposed to handle too, blackballing. That's part of it, blackballing and negotiating contracts and this, that, and the other, but they don't. They take your money and ask you to, or tell you, as most say to the NFL players now, just go play football. We have, people that are protesting that can handle that. They have organizations that can handle that. You just be a football player. And in the act of protesting, I give another example. If you want to see how effective a protest should be, I tell people to go back and study the protests of the Morgan State students from the spring of 1990. I believe it's the spring of 1990, where they were protesting their housing situations, in the dorms. Things were it looked horrible. It made national news, and I think they protested for in unison for at least a full week, and I think it may have lasted about 2 weeks or maybe 2.5 weeks. But one thing they had that most protests, including this one, does not have. They had an agenda. They didn't have just, let's protest, let's march so we can sit and have a conversation. Well, we can have a conversation right now. You and I are having a conversation.
Right.
But if you want results, you must have an agenda. And those students had that. They knew what they wanted. They knew what they were demanding. And they stood their ground until they got it from the state. Now, it came in segments of years after that, but because what the state did immediately was just, because I think it was like the state said it was $7 million that they had for maintenance, for like school maintenance, dormitory, stuff like that, and they only had spent about $700,000 of that $7 million.
Right.
But the scapegoat was that the maintenance that they had a new maintenance director, and I guess he didn't know what to do or how to handle the money. Again, the scapegoat, because again the problems that they complained about or protested about have been there for the longest. So whether if it's the old director or the new director, it was there, and they got fed up, they got tired, they stood together. So and they went and had that conversation. Eventually, because again, playing chess and what we call castling. When you castle, you take the king and you protect him. You put the rook over to the left of it, and the king goes behind the wall. So the governor at that time sent out one of his representatives to speak to them. And what did the representative say? Go back to class. We'll make some adjustments. We'll get it handled. But in the meantime, go back to class. Does that sound familiar? Go back on the field.
Right.
We'll take care of it. Or it'll get taken care of. Go play ball. You're a football player. Go sit in the class. You're a student.
We call him a silencer.
Right.
Like the mouth is the gun. The silencer muffles the effects.
Right.
That brings attention to everything. So he's a muffler, a silencer. And if that person can be used to manipulate the masses, or the ones who are the agitators, the catalysts for change.
But let me jump right in.
Go ahead.
And the students knew better, and they did what you said. I mean, basically what we're alluding to. Nah, that ain't gonna work.
They cut him off, basically.
It was a female that they sent out.
Oh, her.
Yeah. Nah, that ain't gonna work. We still standing our ground till these changes are made. As I said, if you want to see what a protest looks like in this modern time, go back and study that. Morgan State students protest of I think it was spring of 1990, and you'll see how it went. And you'll see where there were a few that started to go back to class, but the core stood their ground. So, and we're talking about students, 19, 20-year-old students, 21-year-olds, versus and what we're talking about now with athletes and grown-ups out that want to protect somebody that don't want to protect themselves.
Think about this, and I put it in my book, but it just made me think about the Attica prison riots. I'm bringing that one up because it's one of the more famous ones. When the prisoners wanted their housing and food demands to be corrected because they was living in squalor and filth. So black and white prisoners got together and said, we're going to have to take some people hostages. So they would send out the spokesperson to speak to the media. You know what eventually happened to those hostages? Some of them were killed, and then they brought in the National Guard to start shooting the prisoners because now the situation was deemed out of control. How does that apply in these sports? Right now, nobody can force people to not protest or players not to kneel. What they're trying to do is get the attention of America, in my mind, to go against, choose sides, pick somewhere down the middle that you think who's right or wrong. Oh, they're desecrating the flag. No, they're not. Oh, they're not kneeling. What? Or they're not standing, they're kneeling. So what they want is the mass of the public to be on the sides of the pundits, of those that's against change. Like you said, that mouthpiece. Of course, Roger Goodell is sitting in the back. There's nobody coming out in the NFL that's really trying to tell players, y'all need to stop this. There's no player in the NFL they're using. Like, you remember Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, speaking of sports, used to be Chris Jackson, the one with the Tourette's. Remember how Akeem Olajuwon, a fellow Muslim, spoke against him praying. He was the original. Before Colin Kaepernick, he prayed during the national anthem. He was in Salat, turned his back, and now they blackballed him out of the NBA. He's in the 3-on-3. He was in the championship game against Trilogy. He was on Three-Headed Monster. He's 48 years old. Deadly three. He was Stephen Curry before Steph Curry. Look him up. Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. His name used to be Chris Jackson out of LSU. Why am I bringing that up? When you think about the blackballing in sports and what Curt Flood did in Major League Baseball, remember he had to take a stand? This isn't new. And this is why we're saying the alchemy of sports. People are thinking this is something new. Even Jackie Robinson, go back and study it. He has a part in his book where he wrote, I could no longer stand for what the flag represents. He wrote this in the book. And you can go back and look at it. It's an excerpt. Look at it online. He even at one point, who later on said something about Muhammad Ali, which to me is a travesty. He spoke about Ali not going because he chose to go to the service. Dumb move. So did Joe Louis. When they can get you negricized, when they can get you to bow down, when they can get you to capitulate, now they got you, and they're hoping they find another person within this whole chain of events, Dub, to get the masses of people to be on their side. They don't want to send a white person out there. They're looking for the average coon brother or sister that can coon it up and say something. What did Michael Vick? Nah, they ain't listening to that crap. Jim Brown, he's a well-known athlete. Yeah, he ain't stirring up the people to get on his side. Colin Kaepernick's going to be a martyr. If he doesn't get a job in the NFL, you still stand your ground, brother. You're going to be working somewhere because somebody's going to need your voice and your attitude to stay strong. No, you're not a modern-day Muhammad Ali. Don't call him that. He's not even in the same breath because Ali was worldwide. This is just NFL. So if we really look at the lesson here, it's not about whether Colin works or not. It's whether what he stands for is really going to be heard, because that's what the protest's about, not a goddamn game. And I think that's where people are getting it twisted.
I laugh because you hit on so many heads on in that brief description that you did. But again, what we're talking about is polarization. people are easily polarized. The quickest way to polarize a people is make it black or white. Again, alchemy, magic. Again, basic definition of alchemy is what? The process of creation, transformation, or combination. But again, we're talking on a professional athletic kind of standpoint, as well as entertainment. And most of those that are in entertainment, they use, let's say, they call it magic. And they use what Aleister Crowley talked about, the way he defined it, and that is simply the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. And that's when you hear people say, "Do as thy will." So they're causing change, and it happens, and it's symbolic. You see it again. Look at the playing field. Look at the colors. Black and white. Who wears black and white? Or the darkness and light? The referee. That balance. They have to keep balance within the equation, within the formula.
Right.
Who else wears black and white? When you have to go to court, for those that have ever been sued, or even civil court, or either criminal court, child support court. When you walk through those gates, those wooden gates, and you look up and you see that judge sitting there, what do you see on he or she's nameplate? It says referee. It rarely says judge. Most of the time it's going to say referee. So if you think you're escaping this because you don't play professional sports, hell, if you don't even have a career or job, you don't. You're still in it. You're still part of this alchemical formula. But I mean, it applies in so many different ways, as the old saying again, as above, so below.
Yin yang.
Exactly. And when you look at it, let's say using like the John Jones versus Daniel Cormier situation.
I definitely wanted to get on that because he's being blackballed. You know that with this test.
Exactly. And even with Floyd and
Conor McGregor.
Conor McGregor. Same thing. Polarization. What did they do with Floyd and Conor? They made it about black and white.
Threw racism in there when he said, "Dance for me, boy." Exactly. And they made that like a week-long thing.
And when I say they, and it's talking about, again, the old saying, them, they, and those. Them or they, we're talking about those, the magicians. Those that know how to work the magic.
Pull the strings. Exactly.
Not a ghost. It's just the magic or the alchemy of it. So.
Well, when you think about this, and you touched on two different athletes that are the best in their sport, Floyd Mayweather and John Jones. Let's look at John Jones for a minute. He was out of the UFC for close to 2 years. One was self-imposed because of the cocaine and the car accident. He hit the woman and she was pregnant and the whole thing. He admitted that wrong. But then he said he took, in his words, a dick pill. A pill to enhance his performance that came up as a drug. And he says, wow, they testing me for this, and I was just trying to get some additional sex. Was it from your wife, dude? I mean, what was you doing to try to perform at that high level? And you're only like 30 years old. He was 29 at the time. So, dude, you need pills? I'm 59, and I don't need no pills. But I digress. A lot of these young people now on pills, you and I talked about that, pause, offline, where people are taking enhanced supplements to improve their sexual performance only to have problems on the back end later. But it's come out now, and you've probably seen this online, Dub, that John Jones passed 7 tests in the month of July and won the day of the fight and after. After the fight, they test you immediately. Of course, John Jones, they're going to test him because he got popped for this before. And it's online that he passed the test. What's this alternate independent test, that came up that showed dirty for a banned PED, performance enhancing drug? To me, that's to blackball another athlete at the top of his game in fighting, like Ali was, like Floyd is. They was hoping to get the great white hype to take him out, and maybe some women on him with the battery thing. But John Jones now is sitting back waiting for the ultimate B sample to be taken to get him not to be vilified as a performing enhancing drug taker, and he's not. But see how this blackballing is taking shape? They're hoping a lot of us on the sidelines are going, I knew he was going to get busted again. I don't think anybody's that stupid. His handlers or nobody else. Something was spiked and tainted on this brother, and hopefully we come to the bottom of this before they try to take his title again.
Yeah, I felt that way before the fight, that something's not quite right, even if John wins this fight. That fight at the time. I felt like it was going to be some type of fix or where he wouldn't win or something about it that wasn't going to benefit him. And Lord behold, it comes afterwards. And the reason being, in my humble opinion, is John Jones now is not marketable. So to promote John, even though he's the best at what he does at this day and time in his respected sport, he's not marketable. He's not marketable for the UFC. Who is? Conor McGregor. He's marketable, even though he keeps losing outside of his weight classes that I don't think he's defended his belt in years. Probably about 2 years.
He hasn't defended his belt in 145 or 150. He won them, but he's never defended them. He beat Aldo, went and faced Alvarez. In between, he fought Nate Diaz twice. That wasn't for a belt. Lost once, won once. But he's marketable this way, his mouthpiece. Mm-hmm. And people like to buy that because he talks a lot of crap. And it just so happens with two of the champions that he talked crap to, he beat. Nate wasn't a champion. Lost to him once. And when he beat him in the second fight, which was questionable, they're going, why don't we make a trilogy of that? And we believe Conor will come win that. It's to sell tickets, brother. The alchemy there is to transform your thinking. You listening audience, yeah, I'm talking to you. They're trying to transform you into buying the hype. You're not buying the fight. You didn't buy the Floyd-Conor McGregor fight. You bought the hype. You didn't buy the John Jones-Cormier fight. You bought the hype of a 2-year man sitting on the sidelines, beating somebody who was an Olympic caliber wrestler, somebody who's supposed to be clean cut. So now the bad guy fights the good guy. The bad guy wins, but now we make him the bad guy again. Superman kryptonite. What's his kryptonite? Performance-enhancing drugs. And to me, that's the bullshit that they're sliding to us, Dub, that they're hoping we sit and have argument about, not dissecting conversation and thought to go, wait a minute, let's put this in perspective. A lot of people won't put it in perspective. They'll bloviate about what they think is right or wrong.
Yeah, we see it all the time. Like I said, when you buy the hype, you're buying the polarization of it again, because I could say something and make you react, make your emotions react. So whenever you're operating off emotions, most of the time you're operating out of chaos. So you have no order and discipline to what you're doing. That's when I hear people say, well, I don't bite my tongue. Well, I have no filter. That's cool, but really what you're saying is I have no discipline.
Right.
You don't know when to move and when not to move. You normally, in a chess game, they're telling me that once you make that first initial pawn move, everything else you're moving with is your queen. You're moving your queen out by herself, which is the most powerful piece on the board, and she eventually gets taken. So you lose because all you had was power. Conor McGregor, that's all you had, power. And what Floyd did was just, I see your queen just moving. I'm going to let you grab that pawn, grab this pawn, grab that pawn. Now you're out here in the deep waters. You're out here in Olakum.
I'm going to drown you.
It's time to. So that, again, that the emotions of people and of the masses of people is what dooms a lot of us, because that's what we tend to run off of. Again, if you use the N word, again, pretty much back in the day, I can't say now, back in the day when someone of a Caucasian race would say an N word or some type of derogatory statement to
you can say nigga here. We know where it comes from.
Yeah, I'm just saying, just in general.
Mm-hmm.
That would normally trigger reaction, but today it doesn't. We can say, well, it's growth, or you can say compromise. But again, I'm just giving an example of polarization. Doing something, saying something, and getting you to react.
Right.
React on my accord, because again, I'm controlling you once you react to what I've done. So that's where the magic lies. Once I put that, let's say, fairy dust out, and you get in chaotic form, I know it works. You want to see my fight. You want to see my athletes. You want to, see the hottest thing going. You want to listen to the hottest thing going. You want to watch the hottest thing. It works.
It's like a strip club to me. I know this. It just came to my mind, and I say this to people. I worked in a strip club back in '92 for 3.5, almost 4 weeks. And I'm using this as an analogy, not to promote strip clubs. I'm saying after a while, protecting, which wasn't the innocence of the women, it was you didn't want it to get past this point. You knew that these women are professional teasers. That's all a strip club is. You can put it in any semantic or context you want. But the point was that energy is going to create more money for the bar. I don't suggest you buy any food at a strip club, people. But these women who are earning their living, a lot of them college students, and you may hear that, those of you who saw the Players Club, a lot of women go there to get money to go through college to earn a decent living. So they do this, what you may consider hedonism and degradation of the black female body especially. But in 3 weeks, my mind had to come to clarity and go, what am I doing? I'm really helping accentuate something that I really don't believe in, even though I'd been to strip clubs. The point I'm making is, at some point, my clarity said, wait, I love my mother. I love my wife. I love my daughters. Why am I doing this to the degree where I have to tell grown men, you can't touch? You can't go beyond this point that they give you. They know the line. You got to know the line. And that now, transitioning it into sports, this is why I use the analogy, they're going to give you something to say, aren't you entertained? But you can't be entertained beyond this point because now you're out of bounds. The lines in sports has a boundary. You're out of bounds there. You can't play over there. In a strip club, there's a boundary. You can't touch, you can't probe, you can't poke, you can't do this, and none of that stuff. So in sports, getting back to the John Jones situation, you may have won by kicking him in the head and then elbowing him on the ground, but you're out of bounds with these drugs we put there. We made you out of bounds. See, we put the lines further in. You was in bounds. But according to these tests that nobody saw, there's still no proof, we're going to say you're out of bounds, if even to tarnish your name for the next 2 to 3 weeks. And that's where the alchemy comes in. We're going to transform you from becoming a hero the night of, what was it, July 29th? What day was it? July 29th, right. It was a month ago. That's what it was, July 29th. We're going to transform your name into mud. And I think people who aren't looking at that with anything, the same thing they tried to do with your political candidate, Obama or whoever. Once I can get a word out about you, whether it's right or wrong, there are going to be many people where the idea was created that you possibly were wrong. They try to do the same thing with making a hero. There's several tens and hundreds of thousands of people who still think Donald Trump is doing an okay job. They're confused. So in sports, when you get somebody confused on the playing field, you cheer or boo, especially with the college football season coming up. And you and I talked about that, especially you being a Alabama fan. Yes, family, Dub Deuce is an Alabama fan. And they've been winning except for last year when Clemson finally got that ass. Pause. My point I'm making is we can get you to choose a side. If your side loses, do you vilify them? Do you not still support them? I don't want to use the word fan because that's short for fanatic. Are you really going to go against John Jones till you find out the truth? Are you really going to say, like back in the day when we were the black imposing figure raping white women? They were going across countrysides hanging us as strange fruit because they said there got to be some black man that whistled at a white woman, Emmett Till. We're going to kill you. So when you kill somebody's character assassination, that's what they hope to do. Even if you're found innocent, sometimes people can't recover from that. And I think that that's what they're trying to do with John Jones and as well Floyd Mayweather. Even though he beat Conor McGregor, he really wasn't a boxer, so that 50 shouldn't count. And they got Stephen A. Smith and other people trying to go, well, I wouldn't count that because that was more of an exhibition fight. They're trying to assassinate something the brother who's been perfect at for doing it 21 years.
Yeah, that's again, and that's been happening since well before our time, Wallace. The assassination of a character, particularly those of melanin progressive beings, assassinating those characters. Even when you look at the when you take it all the way back to ancient Africa, Nubia, Kemet, those when those are discussed, and you have those groups that attempt to assassinate those characters, always want to point out what is deemed negative or what they believe to be negative, and so on and so forth. So, but looking at again, keeping up with the alchemy of it, and using John, since we're still on John Jones, look at what he did inside the ring against Daniel Cormier. As you say, he allowed Daniel to feel that he was winning, that he was progressing. I think the first round, I believe I think that went more of John's way. The second round went more of what we think of as Daniel's way,
right?
On stat, on count, but in actuality, it was going more of John's way, because in that second round, the more John kicked Daniel, and the more Daniel shook his head like, that's not hurting me. That's not hurting me. He didn't realize that what he was doing was being set up. He was being lured into that trap.
Chess.
Yeah, again, another chess move. I'm seeing well beyond what you see, Daniel, because you only see what's in front of you. A sign of a non-chess master. That's what, to me, Daniel and Conor represented in their last two fights. Non-chess masters. Playing or fighting chess masters. So the more Daniel shook, no, you're not hurting me. You're not hurting me. The more he didn't realize that he was being reactive, and his muscles memory were being programmed. His muscle memory was being programmed to, every time John kicks, I do this. I do like a low block and kind of jump back. Low block, jump back. But what he didn't realize, his guard was down. So in that third round, again, John being so tall, much taller, that when he saw John's leg go up, he knew he was going to head it off and try to kick it. Try to block it. But he didn't. He caught one to the head, which staggered him to start to fall. But what John actually did even after that was, to me, even more masterful than the kick to the head. When John saw that his balance was off, he didn't go to try to head strike. He went to strike his equilibrium.
Right.
And how did he do that? By doing a leg sweep. So now, not only are you dazed, I'm about to make even more dazed with I'm going to hit you just below your ankles to leg sweep you. And now you're really off. So when you hit the ground, you're all mine. Again, that he did a chess master against a non-chess master. Same thing. All power, no strategy. Daniel Cormier, Conor McGregor, LeBron James. All power, no strategy. Because when you lack strategy, you lack stamina. All three of those names I just mentioned lack stamina. They can start off well. You can throw Tony Romo in there. Same thing. Oh
God, really?
But listen to what I'm saying. Daniel Cormier, Conor McGregor, LeBron James, Tony Romo. Same kind of mindset. Different accomplishments, of course. With LeBron probably accomplishing more than all of them.
Because he has good cardio. He's a workout freak.
Right, but that's on the physical.
Right.
But we're talking about a chess master. We're not talking physical.
Right.
We're talking mental. Again, anything a magician does or a chess master does or alchemist does is going to be mental, not physical. The initiation of it is going to be mental. So if you lack that stamina to close, to go the distance, then how can you be the master of all masters? You can't.
Which is what Golden State did to LeBron eventually, by letting him know, we're going to let you come with all your force and your power. And that's one of the tenets of Snooker's Ryu, the art I take, Snooker's Ryu Jiu-Jitsu. It's taking your energy, using it against you. Mm-hmm. And most martial arts, when you really understand and blend techniques, it takes the person who's bigger, stronger, faster, and you and I have done shows about that,
right.
Incorporating it even into this show. Bigger, stronger, faster doesn't make you a winner. On paper, it may look like 6'5", 300 should beat 6'2", 210. But that cornerback may outrun that lineman coming at him with the interception because he knows the angle to cut where the big, heavier person can't cut. So I'm going to have to use my attributes against your strength. So when a person's strength isn't measured by himself, but the other person measures and studies you. And I think that's where you're going. Somebody studies you like we've been studied by the so-called oppressor. They studied us even before enslaving us. Athletes are studied in the combine. Boxers are studied in training, in sparring. You study your opponent. You kind of know what he can and cannot do, which is why they don't bring film cameras in all the time. Because guess what? You're being studied to see what you may and probably can't do, your limitations. And I think maybe accentuating what you're saying, Dub, is if an athlete doesn't know their limitations, the other opponent will expose them.
Exactly.
Like Tony Romo, like LeBron James and Conor McGregor eventually.
And Daniel Cormier. Because remember, when he fought Anderson Silva, he, Silva had him out there in them later rounds, and those were Silva's rounds.
Right.
Because, again, he lacked stamina. He lacked the strategy to be, a chess master. Because non-chess masters or just chess players start off very strong. And that's why I gave those 4 athletic names as examples. Because those are traditional strong starters.
Right.
But weak finishers. They always, and even their so-called supporters or fans need, they come up with some type of excuse why that didn't happen. Again, Conor's excuse, well, he's just composed. He's just composed. No, that's a master. He knew what he was doing. You didn't. All you had was power. I'm taller. He has those little fists. That little guy, how can he beat me?
His little head, his little legs, his brittle hands.
And that's when I knew, when I was hearing those little clips of that. And if there was no fixing, no big fixing about who's going to win, who's going to lose, I knew that's when he's going to get his ass whooped. Because he was
and you and I were watching it last week. Remember when we were sitting in my nephew's house and I was like, Dub, I don't like what I'm seeing.
Right.
When Floyd was letting him tag him, I'm like, okay, this is going too many rounds with Conor's building up points. Mm-hmm. If anything to me was going to be fixed, it would have went 12 rounds.
Right.
So when Floyd, of course, got him dazed in the 9th and finished him in the 10th, I'm like, good, the fix is off. Because if this would have went 12 rounds, I wouldn't have liked to have heard the decision. Right. Because they would have made that the second fight. Right. That's how they build up the drama. Floyd's not going to retire now. He's going to get another $1 billion to fight this clown. And people are going to pay for the tickets for that to happen. I'm glad we don't now. UFC can welcome Conor back, and Floyd could go off and do what he's going to do with his businesses. One of them, a strip club I mentioned. But here we go, Dub, now still saying that John Jones, Floyd Mayweather, and other athletes that aren't on the forefront yet. Usain Bolt, he lost his last couple of races. I'm using that for a reason. He's highly marketable. Highly. He donated on paper $150 million to Houston. That got a small story. It's very small. It's not on CNN. J.J. Watt is on CNN. He raised $250,000, which is now $1 million. You heard about that, right?
Right. Well, you got to remember, something has to, again, balance off the negative press that the NFL is now getting about the Ezekiel Elliott case.
Right, who's now got probably will play the first game because they're not going to put the suspension in on paper. How's that working out anyway? They said that they're pulling off the table that he may be suspended because there's not enough proof about him beating up his ex-girlfriend or something like that.
I'm not exactly sure. I think the last thing was the players' union filed a
grievance
injunction or something to block the suspension, what it would allow him to at least play in the first game. Again, that part of it I'm not certain of. But
Big Cowboy fan though, so I figured you would have known that, man. I'm just
keep in mind, and those that are listening to us now, keep in mind, Wallace and I, yes, we do watch sports, but we don't watch it traditionally like a regular fan or someone that's a fanatic. They live and die. They're gonna argue about if somebody says something about the Cowboys, I just gotta jump down at no. Okay, cool. Tony Romo's a piece of shit. As a player, player, yeah, he was. And again, that's why I made the reference to him, and in that for Cormier, McGregor, LeBron, Tony Romo, because Romo and LeBron for years were pretty much the same. They can give you the best 3 quarters that you probably ever seen, and on stat and on paper, but that when it comes that time to be great, in that moment of greatness, they lacked.
You need help from your teammates.
They lost the pressure. And going back to that analogy of chess. One thing you can do to learn better, to be a better chess player, is to play chess on the clock. Because when you play chess on the clock, you can learn to handle pressure. You can learn to think faster. You can learn to think ahead faster. You can learn to watch your opponents and study your opponent faster. Because again, remember, in these fights and games, you're on the clock.
Right.
So you have to strategize. You have to, again, like I said, there are 4 quarters, Atlanta Falcons. 4 quarters in a game. Not 1, not 2, not 3. We won. We would have won if no, it's 4 quarters.
And that game was fixed, so we can
but again, looking at it without even addressing the fixation of it,
right? Just
on a very simple level, you have to be a chess master in this thing to be a better person in this matrix. Because I dare say survive, because I don't want to put anybody in a mindset of just surviving, because if you're just surviving, then you're definitely not living. You're just as polarized as the rest of us. So don't go off emotions. And if you just got power, you got to learn something other than power. You got to hone your skills.
Channel the energy. If you look at it, Dub, think about it for a minute. Sports brings about a certain release of endorphins, right? So does sex. Pause, and I'm using this for a reason. When a man interacts with a woman, there's a certain amount of energy released in the conversation before the act. Now, I'm using that audience, especially our females who are listening, is for this reason. Most women who get a man who just looks at them as a sexual object may be turned off by that, even though they may have put that out there, the allure, the miniskirt, the pumps, the thong, the breast, the cleavage showing. You may have put that out there, but you want the man to deal with you in your mind. You want to know how deep he is. But this man who's working off the emotion of the physical act of sex, you're like, wow, this guy has no patience, no couth. I'm not attracted to him. Whereas a man who's cerebral, who uses his talents between the ears, who thinks, who has a plan, who has an end game, who has a strategy, who's patient, she may go, wow, he's a gentleman. And I'm using that in an analogy with sports is because each quarter of sports is the setup for the win. When the clock goes off and you say 0-0, we got more points than you. Now, females, I'm not saying your points are a game, but in life, the way things are set up is for you not to run off of emotions, which includes you as well. Females, when you're dealing with a man running off emotions because you're angry, men who run off of emotions because she called you out of a name, we got to look at what's the strategy. What is it, like we said in the beginning, what is it your agenda applies you're trying to do? Are we trying to build a family? Are we trying to come together? The NFL with Colin Kaepernick, the UFC with John Jones, the WBA, WBC with Floyd Mayweather. What are we trying to build here? Are we really interested in these people as humans? Do we really love you as a human, John Jones, if you really have a PED problem? Is it about your belt? Do we really believe you're a drug addict? Do we really believe, Colin Kaepernick, that you hate America? We really don't believe that. What we're trying to do is create an end game where we now got another one of you in a box. And I think that's the big picture that as I watch sports and you watch sports, we're going, there's a game behind there. They're on the clock. Watch this chess game they're playing because they want to get you to do what, Dub? React quicker so they could what? Win.
Right. And cross-referencing again, that greatest, or one of the greatest alchemists of our time, Magic Johnson,
right,
on the playing court. Actually, the rivalry that he and Larry Bird had in the 80s, that actually brought a lot of this about. Because remember, before Magic and Larry, particularly Magic, got in the league,
1980.
the NBA was struggling.
Did you see the documentary 30-30, the Magic and Bird, what they did they showed it in 3 parts. Celtics versus the Lakers. There was a 3-part documentary. When you get a chance, watch it on 30-30. It gets real deep to what you're saying, but go ahead, continue.
I saw clips of it. I haven't seen it.
You need to get into that, really.
Yeah. But then I lived it just like you did throughout that time. So,
right.
But I go back and watch it. But I'm saying that to say that prior to Magic and Bird entering the NBA, the NBA wasn't even, a lot of the games wasn't even shown live. Then you also had the ABA as well, who had better athletes at the time. So what the NBA and other owners across professional sports found out, that they need something to market. It was easy to market Larry versus Magic, black versus white,
right,
darkness versus light. So when you follow that timeline, prior to Magic and Bird making an exit, the NBA, again, chess masters, thinking ahead, they had to find a new source, a new product, a new entity to promote. That became Michael Jordan. Moving further down that timeline, the next one they found was the quote-unquote second coming of Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. Then all of a sudden, that Kundalini energy, or Uraeus energy, woke up in Kobe. So he got in a little trouble. He no longer became marketable. So who was next? That became LeBron James, who was marketable, very marketable. May not be the best player throughout most of that career, particularly when he and Kobe was in the league at the same time, but very marketable. So that, when I say, and what I'm attempting to do is give you that alchemy. When I say you, I'm talking you, the audience, that you see but you don't see.
Right.
It's like air. Do you see air? No, but you know it's there.
You got to breathe it.
You don't see air. So there's that trick, per se, that's there. And going and jumping to the point that you talked about with John Jones, when you're done, and I think we talked about this on one of the Bigger, Faster, Stronger shows prior, when that system is done with you, the professional athlete, it's like they take you out as a racehorse that can no longer run. So it's time to kill you. It's time to take you out back and shoot you. That's the quote-unquote assassination of the character, or no longer having anything to do with you. Because remember when John was suspended, had the car accident and suspended for the drug use and all that. If I'm correct, Dana White didn't even reach out to him. Remember, that's one of your cash cows at that moment.
Right.
So how much care or friendship did you really have? And that's the mistake that a lot of athletes make. They think these owners, these promoters, are their friends. No, they're your coworkers. And that's how you have to look at that. Co-workers. Even though you may hang out at the bar or what have you, you still have to put things in perspective.
Don King was known for that, brother. Ripping brothers off.
Right. And I think, was it with
Bob Arum?
The Imam Wallace D. Muhammad said, yes, in order to work safely within any concept, I must first see it in its reality. In order to work safely with any concept, I must first see it in its reality.
The truth.
Exactly. But we are blinded by it. We see it, but we don't see. We know air is here, but we can't see it. So we take it for granted. So we take for granted what we call friendship of the owner, the friendship of the coworker. But when it hits the fan, what happens? They don't know you.
When the air becomes toxic, you breathe it. Now you don't see it, but you feel the poison. And then that relationship you're talking about, if a person has a poison intention, you're going to feel it, but usually when it's too late.
Right.
The end game, like, he was using me. Yes, Don King was ripping you off.
And again, leading up as the timeline, Magic, Jordan, Kobe, Bron, all of those. And that's just in one sport. So the other sports see the same thing. You know, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, those kind of names. You know, all the way up until, you know, even with the baseball thing. They had a hard time marketing because of their steroid use, but they still find some to market their product. But it's big business, Wallace. Who benefits most? We don't. The athlete don't. The alchemist does.
You're a $40 million slave. William Roden wrote in his book. Remember that player? And that's where the title came from. When Larry Johnson got off the court of the Knicks, they were losing. And he told his team, you guys are playing like a bunch of slaves. And Larry Johnson, who became Muslim later, but a white fan yelled to Larry. They said, Larry, you're nothing but a $40 million slave. William Roden wrote that book talking about hockey, every aspect of sports. And I encourage people who don't have the book, maybe spend $15, go get it. If you're interested in sports. William Roden, $40 million slaves. That ties into what you're saying, that some people are paid to shut up. Dub, the athlete is encouraged to just play sports. Don't get into politics. Don't worry about what's happening on the front lines. Be in the background. Let me, your attorney or your agent, handle this. Let us market you, Cam Newton. Remember Cam Newton was marketable for a while? Then he said one thing about the NFL, and they bashed him when he said they're not protecting me. He said Tom Brady and Peyton is getting more protection than me, and he's just as big as was it Peyton Manning? He's 6'5", 250. Peyton Manning isn't as durable as Cam. But when Cam spoke about the refs watching him take hits, and he says, you're not in the league. Well, I'm paraphrasing, but I think it was along the lines of, you haven't been in the league enough to get that call. When he got head cracked in the end zone, the guy came with him with a forearm and hit him above the shoulder pads. And he said, you didn't see that? And he said, you haven't been in the league long enough to get that. Now, my point is, going back to what you're saying, Cam, to a lot of people as a black athlete, handsome guy, pause, he's marketable, nice smile, all of this, they said, we're going to build you up. Uh-oh, you opened your mouth. See, Cam Newton could have been the Colin Kaepernick on paper if he would have kept this up about the NFL and said, I'm protesting us getting hit like this, brothers. I'm one of the black quarterbacks left who's taking a beating. Y'all got my back? What if he would have did that? Would people would have stood behind Cam and say, hey, man, don't blackball this guy because y'all are heading him to the head. But Tom Brady, you're basically stopping the game to make sure he's okay because he's marketable. And the last 2 Super Bowls was won by Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. Ooh. Coincidence? Coincidence?
Definitely not. Definitely not a coincidence. I mean, even, again, talking alchemy, talking magic. I can do a whole show. I even got a presentation on the symbols or the mascots of athletics. When you talk about the Carolina Panthers, the Atlanta Falcons, the Tennessee Titans, the Lakers, the Celtics, all of those have very esoteric meanings. But the masses of the fans have no clue what they really mean. They have no clue about the colors, why they have colors. Again, that's the whole magic. That's the whole playing with your mind first to be able control.
Right.
Again, you don't think colors matter. Go into your child's school.
Talismans, they call them.
Yeah, go into your child's school and see why the walls are certain colors. They're not colors that are bright.
Institutionalization.
Exactly. So it's the same thing. Because again, it's big business. Let me use the McGregor and Floyd Mayweather fight, if I can, for a second, and talking the business aspect. Because in one sense, just on a simple level, when we talk about athleticism, who's better, who's greater, this, that, and the other, the barbershop argument, yeah, you can have these different people and make different arguments. But from a business standpoint, you know, the LeBron James and Floyd Mayweather, they're at the top of that mountain because of what they've been able to do from a business standpoint and been able to manipulate their positions as well as their co-workers' positions as well as their friends. Because I don't know about Floyd's situation, but as far as like I said, basketball, football, baseball, there's no other athlete that has done off the court what LeBron has done in reference to business for those around him. Not just him, but
His
for
crew,
those around him.
he grew up with.
Exactly. So when you look at that and you look at Floyd and Conor fight, let's take that date that was fought on, August 26th,
Yes.
2017. That number, that day, vibrated so much on the number 8. Very much so. What is 8? 8 is the number of an entrepreneur. 8 is the number of cause and effect.
Build and destroy.
As above, so below.
Infinity sideways is the 8.
Darkness and light. So when you look at that date, the universal date, 8. The month, 8. The date, 26, 8. That day of the week, Saturn day.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday, ruled by the planet Saturn, vibrates on the number 8. What is 8 again? One of the biggest aspects of 8 is that's when you see two companies merge. Let's say 2 airline companies merge. They're normally doing it somewhere in a vibration of 8.
Right.
So what I'm saying to you is don't be surprised if you see Mayweather promote UFC fights from here on out. Be involved with. Because again, we're talking about mergers. We're talking about 2 different sports that merged on that day.
And maybe that's why he shook Conor's hand in the ring so much. He goes, I could bring money to the UFC, Dana White. And then somebody may say Floyd. Not to fight in one, because they say give him his revenge fight. Floyd would get choked out in 30 seconds.
Exactly.
But what they would do is have Floyd find a UFC fighter.
Exactly.
To promote.
Right.
One that's current, that probably got a little pizzazz, and Floyd backs him.
Right. And that's what I'm saying is...
That's interesting, brother. I never thought about that.
We watched a merger of 2 entities.
Mm-hmm.
Again, don't as you were saying the night we watched the fight. You were saying to the other guest in the room,
right?
Watch what you're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Watch. But Floyd's not hitting back. Watch what you're seeing. Well, this and that. He's rabbit punching. What? Look at it. Look at it. Look deeper.
Look deeper, right?
Don't just look at it. Look in it. And again, don't be surprised if you see Floyd promoting and marketing and some aspect the UFC, because I think what's going to happen is another one of those fights is going to happen, and somebody that's primed to do that is Tyrone Woodley, because he said 85% of his training is boxing. But Dana White don't like him either. He doesn't care for promoting him either, and the reason is, from my observation, is Woodley fights like Floyd does, but he fights from a UFC standpoint, meaning he doesn't get hit, or he avoids hit.
And avoid getting choked by Damian Maia. They
right.
criticize him for boxing him, not getting choked. Now, what if this happened, Dub? Put the other hat on. What if Conor McGregor starts to promote boxing matches? Boxing has taken a backseat to UFC as far as energy. After Floyd leaves, boxing is kind of dead, even though Triple G and Canelo's getting ready to fight. There are no other big fights out there. They're undefeated brothers. Tyrone Crawford, he's good. But my point is, what if Conor McGregor goes back an Irishman that happens to be good? That guy that beat Pacquiao last. Wasn't he from Ireland? The Scotty somebody, whatever his name is. I think, and you're right, I think Floyd may go into UFC, bring money there. Conor may promote, still fighting the UFC. He may bring money to boxing because he just did. He may say, I'm allowed to promote. Now, you know what's funky about that? When people see it, they're going to go, he's trying to steal. No, he's a businessman.
And remember, as we said that night, and then some people say, oh, well, the ref stopped it too early. No, he stopped it where he was supposed to. Because we said that night that there's an unwritten agreement
with Dana White
that, hey, don't let my guy get hurt. He starts to lose, stop it.
Right before he gets crashed in his face and can't market the next fight.
Because he is the cash cow.
Right.
And again, if you're joining two entities, neither one can really look bad. They have to look like they can handle their own.
Marketable.
Yeah, they have to look marketable. So again, by him stopping it, again, McGregor has no idea what the hell was going on. He just he's not fast. He's just composed. He's just composed. And Floyd was like, yeah, he's a good fighter. This, that, and other. I got all respect for the UFC. This and that UFC. This, that, and other.
They're
UFC.
starting to market it now.
Again,
y'all heard it first here on WKYT. Wally keeps you thinking, and Dub Deuce. We want you to think, because you'll go back and play September 2nd when you post this. And when people say, man, how did Floyd get into UFC? How did Conor McGregor back that fight? We told you that's an idea that may be brewing because we're looking past the fight. We're looking through the lens.
Right, and that's the other part that those that the pawns of the game tend to miss is whenever one exit, something has to replace that. So whenever you're whining or crying about, well, the latest newsman or anchorman or talk show that's talking about your race in a not so good light, and he eventually leaves or get fired, somebody has to replace him. Somebody has to replace that guy. And it's not going to be somebody that you like because you didn't back him. You didn't financially back him. Any president. So they never do anything for you. Just to add that in, not to get off course.
Oh, we know who we talking about. I mean, you backed Obama. Let's say his name. Let's not need people to darn. Some people say, now what's happening with Obama? I mean, if you look at it, he was marketable for 8 years. Now he's quiet because he's letting Trump get his little fanfare. But on the back end, he's doing things he was seen feeding some people in Houston. But it all ties into this topic, the alchemy of sports. It ties into what are you looking at, fan, not fanatic. You could be a fan, which is short for a fanatic. You could enjoy sports, and we're not here encouraging people to turn off the TV, don't watch sports, boycott it. Some of you live off the grid anyway. Somebody living off the grid probably is not listening to internet podcasts either. But my point is, when you watch your next sporting event tonight, tomorrow, when the NFL starts, whenever your sport starts, it's seasonal for some of you. You couldn't wait for football season to come back in. Then basketball is going to round itself. We're going to be closing out baseball season in October. All of the sports you watch, all of the hype, all of the media, all of the energy that you're putting in trying to dissect sports, dissect it and go, he won, they didn't win. It brings money to a city. It brings money to an event. It builds maybe even your character living vicariously. I'm going to say this again. Some of you live vicariously through the athlete. And when the athlete does bad or your town loses, they say Atlanta was devastated when they lost the Super Bowl. People was winning. When that game ended, they said people was in the car. I saw it when I was coming home. I'm like, y'all bought into, y'all didn't see that thing was set up? So you shouldn't feel sad. You should be upset that they took the money. Whoever at the top took the money. But some of you live your life through the city that wins or loses. So let's be careful. I'm even guilty of that, being a giant watcher. I don't want to even say fan, but let's use it for the sake of argument. When they won the Super Bowl the last time in 2008 and 11, I was happy for them because I've been watching them since a child. But I had to understand that it's bigger than them winning it. It's about what they're trying to market in that state, what they're trying to market with the player, what they're trying to do for the sport. So anytime you're watching your next event, UFC, boxing, NFL, NBA, hockey, no matter what, look for the alchemy, the transformation of that sport. What could be done, what's happening in front of your eyes, what you don't see, what's behind the scenes, and try not to be so emotionally wrapped up and trapped up like a figure four or a rear naked choke, because you're going to go what? To sleep. And if they get you to go to sleep, that's where they get your money. And you'll pay to go to sleep again. And they don't mind taking your money when you're taking a nap.
was that Dorothy and the cowardly lion and the scarecrow and the Wizard of Oz. They went to sleep once they were the opium, was thrown into the air per se.
Exactly.
So same thing again, and we're using entertainment to explain actuality, or I dare say truth, because what many tend to do is say, well, that's fictional. That's you talking about a movie, or you're talking about sports. You to explain life, ha ha ha. Yeah. Why? Because there are magicians, literally practicing magicians, alchemists in entertainment and sports. But you don't know that because you're not watching, or you're watching, but you're not looking deeper into the picture.
What is a magician, the synonymous word for magician? It's a rhetorical question, but I'll give you the answer. A magician is a liar. He'll get you to believe he levitated. He'll get you to believe he pulled a rabbit out of a hat. A magician is a liar. Not in the sense I'm lying to you as a person. I'm lying to your reality. You know I can't levitate over a building. Mind freak! Remember Chris Angel when he did that? He levitated Shaq over a building. People saw this. 7'1" Shaq. He had go over a building. And people said, I saw it. I said, do you know he's playing with your mind? Because we know in reality, if you have a real sense of reality, a magician can't do the things he can't walk through a wall. So the point, and I'm sure you're making this very clear to people, the magician on television that's getting you to see what's not there is very crafty. And you will be supportive or angry at said teams or persons or athlete if they get you to believe that the magic trick is true. 3-card money, watch the black, not the red. And if you don't watch what's being done, you're going to be tricked over and over and over. So don't get mad at the player. Get mad at the what? The game. So, brother, let's go ahead and give some closing thoughts on this. This is a very interesting topic. I really think this deserves a part 2, 3, 4, 7. I don't care, because we do this. When we did Bigger, Stronger, Faster, when we was on Harambe, we got rave reviews on that, and I want people to listen out. Our creative brother may post this to YouTube. May be something that we think people need to hear on a wider scale. We may come back in the future with even an athlete in the related sports of fighting or football, if we can find them, and talk about the concussion protocol when we was trying to get the good doctor on before. But I think shows like this with brothers like yourself who in the past didn't want to come on the mic. Brother Dub was a great producer. He used to be in the background. But when he gets to come to the mic, now you see why we need this very in-depth mind to explain and break down what we're talking about and make you go think as a chess player, not checkers.
Well, in the final moments, I'll definitely say this. Let's give the audience another name for a magician in the average everyday 9 to 5. Engineer, scientist. We just call them by different things. So don't get spooked out. So we have the tendency, particularly the people of melanin progression, have the tendency to get spooked out because we're trapped in another box called religion, which is worse than what we've been talking about today.
We're going to do that show too, brother.
So, but again, a scientist, an engineer, a magician, an alchemist pretty much all do and use the same elements, do and use the same chart, elementals, the periodical table. So you, the audience, what you see and what you don't see. What you don't see is when your first eye, which many call your third eye, is not activated. So what Wallace and I tend to do, like I said, we watch it with our 2 eyes on a simple level. But a lot of times, even just going to the movies, we can't close that first eye because it's talking to us and it's telling us what we see or what's really there. Again, using sports as an analogy, many people still don't, colors, as we talked earlier. What are the colors used in fighting? Blue in red. In the red corner, weighing such and such pounds, whatever, Conor McGregor. In the blue corner, 149 pounds, champion, Floyd Mayweather. Red on the left side is receptive. Blue on the right side is projecting. Who was receiving and who was projecting? Again, as the old saying, and the right hand is not mine to give, and the left hand is for those who's prepared for it. What are you prepared for? Are you just running out like a pawn, jumping across the boundaries, as we talked about before, and what we've been explaining this whole time? Cross-reference again. Most of us in the masses and emotions are like deer running across the street in front of a car to get to the other side of so-called greener pastures, the sunken place. That's all we've been explaining for the most part of today. The sunken place.
From the movie Get Out, for those who are like the sunken place. By now, many of you should have saw Get Out, so that's what he's referencing.
And again, are you still there? Do you want to be there? Again, and the right hand is not mine to give, and the left hand is for those who's prepared for it. Prepare for what you face every day and what's to come. I'll shake it, bro.
Hey, brother, listen, this is not just a show to me. This is a conversation between two kings who happen to live as athletes who, like you said, you've been blackballed. I was in college off the JV basketball team. I was the top defensive player with a decent jump shot, but not past 10 feet. And the coach wanted a 25-foot shooter. But I D'd everybody up, and I was used on the practice squad to practice. And I remember one of the greatest things that happened when we was getting blown out by 20 points in Lehman College in 1977. He asked me to go get a uniform and put it on to stop their guy. I'm like, I will not do that. Because I was on a radio station and the Black Student Union. Now you want me to come in and play D? It won't happen. So I think blackballing, which is where we started this off with, and somebody not measuring the truth of what they are, we have to go back and see, maybe in our own lives, how we can put this in perspective. Go ahead, brother. You have one more thought.
The last thing, well, the other thing that I left off in the last segment is, even if you decide to continue watching sports, and I use the flag since we started off with the Colin Kaepernick thing with the flag. Man, I can't remember standing for the flag in the past 10, 15 years.
30 for me. I've been stopped right. National anthem.
But the thing is, when I'm at these events, and if it starts to play, if somebody starts to sing, if I'm sitting, I'm already sitting. If I'm standing, I'm already standing. Again, I don't move one way or the other. So if you're watching sports, watch it. If you don't watch it, don't watch it. So don't let whatever's going on now, that until the NFL players protest, boycott, have a work stoppage. Why would you stop doing what you're doing? Because again, remember, as I was alluding to, if you are having a child playing sports, high school, pee-wee, college, whatever, you're probably still going to watch that game. And for many of us, like myself, sports is the first discipline that we get. Sometimes, we tend as parents, particularly back in the day, would send our children off to get that discipline from the military. But no, a sport like football, they can be very disciplined in. But that's a decision that you make, knowing the risks that we know, knowing about the risks that we know today, that they could have head trauma. So if you make that decision, make sure that child gets that discipline from that sport. Because again, to learn to get knocked down, but you got to get up, because mom ain't coming to save you.
Right.
Whether if it's boxing, whether if it's football, you get hit. You got to find that inner self, that inner will, do as thy will, to get up. And not just get up, but to fight. Because you're not always going to win on that scoreboard. You're going to have to take some losses. But again, brother, I ain't come here to debate. I didn't come to debate. I came to educate. And hopefully that triggers you to elevate.
Educate, relate, And you did accentuate, brother. This was interesting. I really appreciate the energy, Dub, especially bringing up the topic of the alchemy of sports. I think this was long overdue to supplement some of the other conversations we've had in the past about sports and related items. If anybody, Dub, and this is on you, if they wanted to contact you in communication for any reason on your expertise in this or related subject matter, is there any communication you want to give out?
Other than, I would suggest that you subscribe to my YouTube channel. That is Taui Productions. Again, that's SMAI TAUI Productions. Because that's the best way to hear information like this, whether it's a podcast, video, what have you. Because what we have to do, Wallace, and we discuss this with others as well, is remember you got to keep your space sacred.
Right.
So everybody shouldn't be involved in your space. So, but we tend to allow people that aren't worthy of our space to be involved in our space, and particularly our sacred space. But for me, that's the best way. Go to my YouTube channel, Taui Productions.
Okay, you heard it from our good brother, and this is me again, Brother Wali. You can always catch me on Wali's Wisdom. Those of you who have been visiting and, attending to the site, I thank you. Those of you who keep in touch with me by email, I thank you as well. Those of you, especially the many texts that I get, thank you as well. I try to reduce the number of group texts I send out, because when I get the reply, the person doesn't reply solo, they reply as a group, and everybody starts reading it, and some people get a little perturbed at that. But this was the Alchemy of Sports with Brother Wali and Brother Dub Deuce the Poet on WKYT, Wali Keeps You Thinking, Wali's Wisdom Podcast. There'll be many shows like this again that we want to keep educating you on, whether it's religion, health, wealth, knowledge, or self. It's about building you as a person up. And today was no different. I enjoyed doing the back-to-back. Again, last night's show with my daughter, Kiwi the Beauty, from vision board to vision board. And now with my good brother, Dub Deuce the Poet, the Alchemy of Sports. There will be no show tomorrow, family, on Sunday. Most of you who know that I post on a Sunday. I'll be attending the annual House in the Park festivities down with Brother Kimmett and Brother Raymond Rossol and Kyle Say. I enjoy house music. I'll probably be down there a few hours, then do my thing, leaving. But I just wanted to let you know this, family. We all have a destination, whether round trip or one way. Our life is a journey, which starts with the first day. I want you to all go out and make it a positive one, family. And on behalf of me, Brother Wali, and Brother Dub Deuce, until we talk again, Hotep.